Engineer Gold Mines is focused on the exploration and development of the historic high-grade Engineer Gold Mine situated 32 kilometers southwest of Atlan, British Columbia. Engineer Gold Mines is fully permitted for surface and underground exploration with the drill program now underway. Engineer Gold Mines Limited trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol EAU. For more information, please visit us at engineergoldmines.com.
You're listening to HowStreet.com radio, available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Welcome to HowStreet.com radio, the online source for market opinions. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is home ownership consultant Ross Kay from the wealthyhomeowner.ca, Canada's authority on home ownership. Welcome back to the show, Ross, and best of the season.
Yeah, same to you, Jim. Merry Christmas.
Ross, last week the Canadian Real Estate Association announced the average price had reached $603,000 in November. The press announced house prices had gained $115,000 since April's low. Well, you've had a week to take a look at the stats. What can you tell us about them?
What I can tell your people about them is that MLS Magic Math is in full active working procedures right now. What you're reading is you're reading in a story that they want to tell you, as I've said on the show for 3 years, and it's a story that I also told you during this lockdown that is going to reveal itself for the first time, really since organized real estate began. What you didn't hear announced, Jim, was that in November we broke the $300 billion mark on an annual basis of real estate being traded. We broke $300 billion. That means members of the Canadian Real Estate Association participated in the trade of real estate that they reported as over $300 billion. Now, for your listeners to put that into context, the previous record was only $264 billion. We have never seen this amount of money trading hands in the history of Canadian real estate. The numbers we're looking at right now, Jim, are double what they were in 2011. Now, of course, with that amount of real estate being traded, there is a reciprocal amount of new mortgage origination debt being booked. There's two charts that the public doesn't get access to. One is the amount of volume that trades hands on real estate boards across Ontario or across Canada. That information is supplied to Canadian banks and to Canadian governments from the Canadian Real Estate Association. It's a report that they publish every month that these organizations pay to get or subscribe to get, depending on how they get them. But the reason the public doesn't get them is because it's very easy to do a calculation game on how much commissions are earned when you hear volume. When you hear that you've had a record volume of $300 billion, which is going to surpass $307 billion by the year's end, it's possible it's going to hit 300 and 310. That's a tremendous amount of commission money that's being made. So you didn't hear that number. What you heard was there were 49,600 homes sold in the month of November, as reported to MLS systems across Canada. 49,600. So what I want your listeners to do, the people who care, or the people who question what I say on the show every week, I want you to get your calculator out. Go ahead and hit pause now on your podcast or YouTube, wherever you're listening to this, and go get a calculator. If you've got a computer with a spreadsheet, open your spreadsheet up, because I want you to plug some numbers in. The Canadian Real Estate Association announced last year that the average selling price in November was $530,000. $530,000. You can go back to the old press releases from the Canadian Real Estate Association, and you can find this out. $530,000. You can also do it by a quick calculation, a backwards calculation, comparing it to the gain that they posted this year. That's currently on CREA stats on the CREA website right now. 530,000. Well, what I would tell your listeners is that what happens if those homes, 49, 49,600 homes sold at $530,000 this year. In other words, what happens if those exact same homes sold at the exact same price as they did last year? Well, that would mean you had a volume of $26.29 billion. $26.29 billion. So if all 49,600 homes times $530,000 each sold, you would have $26.29 billion of real estate that was traded in hands. Check your calculation out. Now, I'll tell you that the Canadian Real Estate Association reported $29.90 billion had been sold. In other words, there's a difference of only $3.6 billion. In other words, if all of the homes sold this year had sold at the same price that they did last year, there would only be a $3.6 billion shortfall. Now, I would ask your listeners, can I find $3.6 billion amongst those 49,600 homes sold? Can I find 1,000 homes that sold for on average, let's say 3.6 million. 1,000 times 3.6 million average equals your 3.9 difference. The full difference is accounted for, okay? The full difference is accounted for. The 3.6 billion difference is accounted for. If I can find 1,000 homes that sold for an average of 3.6 million. Interesting, Ross. So what you're telling me is 49,600 homes sold at the exact same price they did last year, and you want me to believe, Ross, that 1,000 extra homes sold that averaged 3.6 million each. Okay, prove it. Well, I think that's really the problem that you have, folks. Because if you go to Realtor.ca today and you break down their inventory that's for sale right now today, you're going to find that approximately 4% of the homes for sale on Realtor.ca are priced at over $2.5 million. In other words, 96% of all homes for sale are priced below that point. 4% are priced above. Now, if we look at 1,000 extra sales over 49.6, that's 2%. That's only 2% of the homes that were sold would have to be above that. In other words, if last year 2% sold, and this year it was 4% that sold over the 2.5, and they averaged 3.6 million, there's your answer. Here's a case where 98% of the homes trading hands could have sold for the exact same price this year as they did last year. And the only difference is an extra 2% of homes were being sold that averaged 3.6 million. Ross, that sounds unbelievable. Well, folks, it's in the data. It's sitting there in the data. You can go to your regional real estate boards across Canada. Just pick the two big ones. Pick the Real Estate Board of Greater Vancouver and the Real Estate Board of Toronto, and go into their press releases, their stats releases for November, and compare them against November's of last year. Oh, I'm going to tell you that just in two regions of Vancouver, the two regions where the average selling price is substantially higher for those extra homes that were sold in November, substantially higher than the 3.6 million. There's 300 extra home sales right there. So now I'm down to 700. Can I find 700 in the rest of Canada when there was 49,600 homes that sold? I'm pretty sure that I can. Now this is what I want to end this discussion with over this crazy price change that they're announced, average price, the historical belief that the average purchase price equals the average house price. You can purchase 50% of the homes on Realtor.ca today for under $405,000. 50% of the homes for sale today can be purchased for under $405,000. 80% of the homes, 83% for the sake of the argument, of the homes for sale on Realtor.ca today can be purchased for under the $603,000 the Canadian real estate said the average house is worth. 83% of the homes can be purchased for less than what the average price was. It's because average price has nothing to do with house prices. It's called the average purchase price for a reason. There's a home that sold in Vancouver for $27 million. That home sold for $27 million. If that home was reported sold in the month of November, that single sale would have created an extra $540 in average price. That single one home of the 11 million homes in Canada, just that one home would have inflated the national average price, as reported by the Canadian Real Estate Association, mainstream media, Canadian banks, CMHC, the Government of Canada. It would have inflated that number by $540. Now listen, folks, because this is how house price illusion works. Let's say that there were 10 million owner-owned homes in Canada. Let's say there were only 10 million. There's more than that, but let's say there's only 10 million. And the average price inflation from the single $27 million home selling was $540. What that means is that one home selling, getting reported by the Real Estate Board of Greater Vancouver, getting reported to the British Columbia Real Estate Association, which in turn reports it to the Canadian Real Estate Association, gets added into the national average price, inflating the national average price by $540. It means that one home selling in a month makes the average wealth in Canadian homes increase by $5.4 billion. Everybody is saying, how are Canadians continuing to spend? How are Canadians continuing to go out and spend money, keep household consumption up, make GDP not look bad during a pandemic, lockdown, recession? How is that happening? Well, folks, when banks believe that one $27 million home selling in Vancouver means over 10 million homes are now worth $5.4 billion more, money is being created out of thin air. And if you want to understand how modern monetary theory works, I've just explained it to you in terms of a housing perspective. One single $27 million home sells, it creates $540 worth of MLS house price illusion, which gets transferred into the lending being done to over 10 million Canadian homes, and it creates $5.4 billion of added home equity wealth. Since that home equity wealth can be leveraged generally by 50%, it means you just have created an opportunity to insert $10.8 billion into the Canadian economy simply because one ultra-luxury class home sold in Vancouver for $27 million.
We'll have more with Ross Kay right after this.
Value from success, growth in discovery. Golden Arrow Resources is a well-funded gold-copper exploration company with proven management and prospective properties in Chile, Argentina, and Paraguay. Golden Arrow trades on the Toronto Venture Exchange, symbol GRG, on Frankfurt, symbol G6A, and the OTCQB, symbol GARWF. For more information, visit us at goldenarrowresources.com or call Sean at 778-686-0135.
Media recognition from Bloomberg, Reuters, recycling trade publications. Patented process for 100% recovery of critical metals, including cobalt, lithium, nickel, manganese, aluminum. American Manganese is focused on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. American Manganese trades on the TSX Venture, AMY, the US, AMYZF, and Frankfurt 2AM. For more information, visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Ross K. Ross, a listener, asked, Ross is often talking about families owning a couple or even several homes over their lifetime. I was wondering, does Ross have an ideal timeline on how it's best for a family to obtain a single detached home? And if so, how many homes will they have to own before they finally get that detached dream house?
Okay, so this is a great question, and the answer is complicated in many ways, but in a historical perspective, because we've studied the home ownership, we have so many years, decades of data. We have followed so many families as they followed this journey, Jim. We've got some pretty concrete idea of this. So normally in Canada, people move about every 12 years. That is what the average has been over the last 50 years. So you could say that, if you're looking at a 48-year window, you're talking about moving 4 times. Arguably you should try to be into a single detached home if that is your goal by your 3rd home. That would be a standard real estate answer that I would have given you when I was selling real estate. I wouldn't give you that information anymore that way, because when I go back and I look at the amount of wealth that is lost every time you trade homes, it's staggering. Also, if you're not moving when your current home is at its peak wealth growth, and the home that you're looking to buy maybe is at the early stage at its wealth growth, if you don't time those two things in the right way, there is a massive financial loss that incurs over the course of those 40 years. What we're doing right now, and which we're launching for people in our buyers program in early 2021, is I think pretty much everybody knows what the energy guide is for appliances. Do you know what that is, Jim? The energy guide for appliances? That yellow sticker that appears on every appliance that's sold in Canada. If you're buying an air conditioner, you know what the SEER is, the SEER, the Seasonal Energy Efficiency Rating. Okay, well, homes are the exact same thing. There is a home equity efficiency rating on each home. In other words, your home is acquiring the most wealth at the highest rates that it ever will at certain times. Now, your wealth efficiency is dependent upon, number 1, the province you're located in, number 2, the CMA you're located in, and number 3, the municipality or neighborhood that you're located in. Number 4, it's depending on the class of home that you're buying. Class is determined by price. The next one, number 6, is the style of home that you're buying. Obviously a detached versus a condo versus a townhouse versus a semi-detached. They all have their own efficiency ratios. Then the quality of home that you're buying, and when you take all of those features combined, you can come up with an equity efficiency ratio for a given home. So we have another metric that we use to measure the quality of houses, but we've been almost afraid to publish a home equity efficiency ratio because it was such a complicated calculation to come up with. So over the last couple of years, we've been working on that on and off, and we finally come to a stage where we're confident now in the inputs that we have to put into it, and able to, in other words, able to be able to put something that we can explain to the consumer how it works. So what I would say to your listener is this: in a perfect world, you're into a single detached home by the time you're 40. That is in a perfect world. You need to look at your income level, the amount of money that you're earning today, and the amount of money you expect to be earning by the time you're 40. Try to be realistic with those numbers. Then you look at that money, the money that you're bringing in, and take 30% of it, and assume you're going to put that towards a mortgage. You have to understand, mortgage rates today are not going to be the same mortgage rates that you see 5 years from now or 10 years from now. So this is a bit of a game. This is why we always tell people, to look at the 10-year rate. If you look at the 10-year rate, you pretty much can figure out what the average is going to be over that 10-year period. Expect that if the rate right now is lower or closer to the 5-year rate, they're not expecting rates to go that much higher in the last 5 years of a 10-year term. You've got to make a compensation for that. Again, there's simple math, there's simple historical data that you can use to do that, but that's what needs to take place. Because from that number, that 30% number, that's going to tell you what amount of money you could spend on a mortgage. You're going to have a certain amount of home equity by the time you're 40. So between your home equity and your mortgage, that's going to determine the price of a home that you're able to buy. Now you have to decide where you've got to move to get that house. Odds are it's not going to be in Vancouver, and it's not going to be in Point Grey. Odds are it's not going to be in Toronto's Rosedale. It's not going to be in my hometown, Burlington's Roseland. That's not going to be in those cities. It's going to be in communities where regular families are living. Those homes are not for regular families. They're homes that are part of the discussion where how that 1,000 homes selling that skewed the national average by $72,000 year over year, and 115,000 year over year in November. So that would be my answer to you. What you really need to do is you need to have a wealth efficiency rating on the home that you're living in now, and a wealth efficiency rating on the home you're looking to buy. And every trade that you make, you want to be sure that you're trading to a home where that efficiency rating is getting better. You don't want to be trading your existing home where, let's say for the sake of the argument, you're accumulating wealth at $50,000 a year for a home where you're only going to be accumulating wealth at $30,000 a year. What you want to be doing is trading the home where you're accumulating wealth at $30,000 a year for a house where you're accumulating wealth at $50,000 a year. Now, you have to have both metrics on both sides of the home trade, but that's what we've been working on the last couple of years. Without you having access to that, what I'm going to tell you to do is to go back to the old standard. The old standard is try to set down roots in a community where the odds of you owning a single detached home when you're 40 to 45 is high. Because what I'll tell you is this, that 40 to 65 year window is where you're going to accumulate the greatest amount of wealth in your lifetime. Your kids are going to, if you're having kids, they're going to transition to university. You're going to become empty nesters. Your mortgage is going to be paid off, or you're going to rapidly be able to pay down your mortgage. If you've selected a home type that is at the higher house price gain over the next 20 years, you're going to see your wealth being accelerating during that period. These are the simple facts about home ownership. These are the facts that we have learned studying homeowners over the last 40 years. These are the facts that we can go back and test against 80-year-old data and prove them still to be true. You've got to understand, the current environment in Canada is to densify our cities. City planners universally want denser and taller cities. Denser and taller cities naturally cause housing unaffordability. It makes homes unaffordable. It makes homes at the top of the property tier greater wealth accumulators than homes at the bottom of the property tier. So a simple answer is try to set forward a plan where you're 40 to 45 years old, get you into that single detached home, make decisions that are rational, and minimize the number of trades required to reach that point. Because you've got to remember, every single trade that you make in real estate removes 10% of your wealth that you would have accumulated by not moving. Okay, that wealth is gone. That wealth then compounds. That loss compounds over the next, say, 25 to 40 years, depending on how long you're a homeowner. In other words, if you lose $50,000 today through an extra home trade, that $15,000 grows at 6% a year, compounded annually. So you get a calculator out, type in $50,000 times 1.06, and keep hitting that equal sign 25, 30, 40 times, and you'll see how ridiculous that number goes. When I was selling real estate, I never considered the wealth impact of me removing a charging commission. Now, luckily for me, in all the years that we sold real estate, we had a guarantee for our owners. Our guarantee was, if we could not sell your home for more money than what your last neighbor sold at, that would wipe out all of our commission. In other words, it would cover all of our commissions. We would make up the difference by reducing our commission rate. So I really don't have any guilt that way, but my perspective on the real estate industry at large changed when I sat back and understand the amount of wealth that is removed with every single trade in real estate. Reduce the number of trades that take place, forecast your income and your life goals, and from that, you create a timeline to when you want to be in and where you want to be in that single detached home. If you're a member and if you're in our buying program, those efficiency metrics are going to be available in early 2021.
We'll have more with Ross Kay right after this.
Avon Resources Limited is a gold exploration company with significant projects in British Columbia and the Yukon, trading on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol ABN, and the OTCQB, symbol ABNAF. Surrounded by world-class gold deposits and mines, Avon's 23,000 hectares Forest Kerr Gold Project is located in the heart of the Golden Triangle in northwestern BC. For more information, visit us at avonresources.com.
Don't miss out. Stay informed. Receive the HowStreet.com weekly recap with thought-provoking podcasts, radio, and articles delivered to your inbox. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage at HowStreet.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Ross Kay. Ross, is it an urban myth that Canadians are fleeing big cities for the countryside? We know it's happening in the U.S., but is it really happening here in Canada?
Okay, so this is one of the problems you have when you're talking about housing markets, Jim, okay? So there is always a certain degree of truth to anything that is said about a housing market, okay? So when the Canadian Real Estate Association says the average price in November was $603,000, there's a certain amount, a minimal amount of truth to that statement. The problem with that little tiny bit of truth is that it creates an illusion that something else is going on. It provides protection for those who are issuing a greater falsehood by them being able to point their finger at the truth. In the first segment of this show, I explained to you how 98% of the homes can trade hands for the exact same price they traded hands for last year, and a mere 2% can be additional sales can take place of ultra-luxury class homes that skew the average by $72,000 year over year. So this is the problem when I get into this discussion, because this is what happens. These small towns that we're talking about, Jim, are small towns that often have fewer than 5,000 homes, towns that often in a trading month will trade maybe 100 homes. So if two extra buyers join that market, the exact same impact I expressed in the first segment of this show on a national level happens on a local level. And it reinforces the comments made at the national level. Is there a massive exodus of families from large urban areas to outlying suburban areas? No. How do you know this isn't true? You know this isn't true because there's not enough of new housing stock being added to these cities. There is simply not enough new homes, single detached or attached or semi-detached, being built in these cities to accommodate a massive exodus from the large urban cities. There is enough construction going on, and the fact that these smaller communities disproportionately have new home builders listing their properties on the MLS, where in the major CMAs, the new builders do not list their homes on the MLS. And this singular fact also skews the information that you're reading in the newspaper about rising home prices. One of our favorite cities right now in Canada to look at, it used to be Calgary, still is in many ways, except in Calgary, they're not claiming house price gains. House prices in Calgary are dropping. The only thing that's keeping house prices up, the illusion where it is because new builders in Calgary list on the MLS. And since the home buyer has a preference towards newer, higher quality homes, when spending the exact same amount of money, they buy those new homes. When they buy those new homes, because they in Calgary or London, Ontario, those homes are listed on the MLS, it inflates the MLS average selling price. In Vancouver or in Toronto, that doesn't happen. What your listeners, I hope, can understand is this. If you go to some regions in this country, some real estate boards in this country, you can search for homes based on the year of build. You can go to other CMAs in this country, other MLS systems in this country, and you cannot do that search. You can't do that search in Toronto. You cannot do a search to find, I want to buy a home that was built after 2013. You can't go to a Toronto real estate broker and type in that search. It's impossible. If I want to do that in Calgary, I can do it tomorrow. If I want to do that in Victoria, I can do that tomorrow. If I want to do that in Vancouver, I can't do that tomorrow. Why are all these real estate boards acting differently? Well, it's because generally speaking, it's whether or not new builder supply is posted on the MLS. In London, Ontario, it's not posted, so you have to search it in another way. But I can tell you that in London, Ontario, the reason why house price gains are what they are is because builders are now building $600,000 and $700,000 new homes, which were never built before. And unlike Vaughan or Markham or Toronto or Burlington, where builders refuse to put their listings on the MLS, in London, builders have always put their listings on the MLS, or at least they have for a long time. Generally speaking, and as a housing market corrects, the market slows down and new builders feel pressure, especially new builders with inventory that they have to sell. And they finally may knuckle under and put their listings on the MLS. Well, why don't they put them on the MLS? Well, because you got to pay a real estate broker when you put your listing on the MLS. When Comfrey, which is now called Purple Bricks, entered the MLS systems in 2013 and increasingly commanded market share as of the fall of 2014, all of a sudden builders had access to MLS for next to nothing. It was basically free. It was cheaper to advertise on MLS by paying Purple Bricks than it was, or Comfrey, than it was to put ads in the local newspaper. So if you had inventory, like London, Ontario, or like Calgary, you would put that inventory now on your local MLS. Realtors responded over the next couple of years and reduced their commissions for the new home builders. So the new home builders no longer had to just go with the for sale by owner model. They now could hire a realtor at like 1% commission. So when you're hearing these stats about in the United States, about the massive output to the country, you have to understand this, folks. In the United States, no one can tell you how many homes actually sold in November. The National Association of Realtors in the United States has no idea how many homes sold by the members, realtors in the United States in November of 2020. The National Association of Realtors has no idea. The Realtors Association of New York refused, the largest real estate market in the United States, refused to send their data to the National Association for years. They didn't even call themselves realtors. Even only now, they're gradually referring to themselves as realtors because they wanted to keep that data secret. Each state in the United States operates differently, the same as each province in Canada operates differently. The MLS infrastructure in those states, and as in all provinces, operate differently. Yet your national trade associations, NAIR, in Korea, they have to sell a message to their members that they're producing results for them. That means in the United States, Yun does the job that Klump did for Korea. Yun does for Nair what Klump did for Korea. He produces documents that help his members sell houses by creating house price illusion and fear of missing out. Korea does the same thing with their stats each month. Go back to the first episode with a calculator. Get it out. Do the math. As I tried to lay it out live as I'm talking to you online. So folks, I may make mistakes when I'm talking to you. I may not sound 100% clear, but understand this is not rehearsed. I come onto this show with Jim. We have questions that are submitted today that I read live. There's no script here. When I'm speaking to you, I'm speaking the truth from the data that I have before me. So when I'm telling you that an extra 2% of Korea's sales shifted to homes above that averaged $2.6 million, and that the other 98% didn't have to change price a penny, I'm speaking from fact, the data. I'm trying to relay that information to you in a way that you can check it. You can get a calculator and type in 49,600 times 530,000. It equals 26.29 billion. You can do the other calculation. You can take the volume that Korea reported, 29.90 billion, minus what I told you, the 26.29 billion, and you have the 3.6 billion missing. I told you 1,000 extra sales. I cited a couple extra places where you can go find hundreds of those extra sales yourself. They really did happen. And then I have to ask you is, why did no one ever tell you that? This happens every 10 days in MLS systems across North America. The sales mix changes every 10 days. The sales mix changes on a pattern that evolves over time. As that pattern evolves, the change in dollars between each month increases, okay? The average selling price in each month, which is a consequence of each 10 days, changes and increases over time. You didn't see the change take place in 2013 that you did in 2016, which you've seen in the fall of 2020. You never saw $115,000 of change between an April and November. Never happened before. As a matter of fact, this April's average selling price was exactly the same as the average selling price in Canada, I believe it was in November of 2018. Well, you know what was the same in those 2 months, folks? Even though the sales numbers weren't the same, the sales mix was the same. The sales mix in November of 2018 was the same as the sales mix in April of 2020. And what magically was exactly the same in November of 2018 and April of 2020, the average selling price was $488,000. This massive exodus from the urban areas to the suburbs is illusion. It's simply a result of teeny tiny markets having a few extra sales, which get reported as a percentage change that is disproportionate to the number of homes that exist in the country being studied.
Ross, thank you so much for chatting with us, and have a great Christmas.
Hey, same to you, Jim, and I guess I will talk to you before the new year.
My guest has been home ownership consultant Ross Kay, Canada's authority in home ownership at thewealthyhomeowner.ca. If you have any questions for Ross and he loves to answer them, send them to info@housestreet.com. Find us on Twitter @HouseStreet. Our YouTube channel is Talk Digital Network. We're also on Facebook. I'm Jim Goddard. Best of the season.
Comments made on HouseStreet.com radio are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any matter whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. HouseStreet.com radio is a production of House Street Media Incorporated.